Ottawa, Illinois, August 21st, 1858. The first Lincoln-Douglas debate. Thousands have gathered to watch Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas argue over slavery and states' rights. The stakes are enormous. These debates will shape the 1860 presidential election. Then Douglas goes for the personal attack. He mocks Lincoln's past. "I was a school teacher in the town of Winchester, and he a flourishing grocery keeper in the town of Salem." The crowd erupts in laughter, because everyone knows what grocery keeper means. It's frontier slang for tavern owner, bartender. Douglas is calling Lincoln a glorified saloon keeper. Lincoln fires back immediately. Now I pass on to consider one or two more of these little follies. The judge is woefully at fault about his early friend Lincoln being a grocery keeper. But Douglas isn't wrong. In 1833, 23-year-old Abraham Lincoln did obtain a liquor license. He did sell brandy, gin, rum, and whiskey by the drink. He was, by any definition, a licensed bartender, the only U.S. president who ever held that distinction. This is the story of Berry and Lincoln, the general store that became a tavern, the business partnership that ended in disaster, and the debt that haunted Lincoln for 15 years. How Lincoln became a storekeeper. Lincoln arrived in New Salem, Illinois, in July 1831 at age 22. His flatboat got stuck in the Sangamon River while heading to New Orleans. After freeing the boat and completing his trip, he returned to New Salem and decided to stay. He worked as a store clerk, split rails, and volunteered for the Black Hawk War in 1832. When Lincoln returned from military service in late 1832, he needed work. His thoughts wandered between learning the blacksmith trade or studying law. But strangely enough, a man offered to sell an old stock of goods on credit. Lincoln and another young man, William F. Berry, age 21, bought the inventory in January 1833 and opened Berry and Lincoln General Store. The store sold typical merchandise, apparel, dry goods, hardware, home furnishings, and food. They offered meals, breakfast, dinner, and supper for 25 cents each. They rented lodging for 12.5 cents per night. They even stabled horses for 25 cents with feed for another 12.5 cents. But there was a problem. Stores could legally sell alcohol in quantities greater than a pint for off-premises consumption. But it was illegal to sell single drinks to consume at the store without a license, and serving alcohol by the drink was where the real profit lived. So Berry and Lincoln decided to get licensed. The $7 license. On March 6, 1833, William Berry and Abraham Lincoln obtained a tavern license from the Sangamon County Commissioner's Court, costing $7. The license was taken out in Berry's name only, though Lincoln co-signed the $300 bond guaranteeing good behavior. Now legally licensed bartenders, they could sell spirits by the drink. The prices were listed on the license: half pints of French brandy for 25 cents, peach brandy for 18.75 cents, and apple brandy for 12 cents. Holland gin cost 18.75 cents per half pint, while domestic gin was 12.5 cents. Wine cost 25 cents, rum 18.75 cents, and whiskey 12.5 cents. They also sold beer and cider. Berry and Lincoln were now running what frontier Americans called a grocery, a store that sold liquor for on-premises consumption. Not quite a saloon, but not quite a general store either. A hybrid establishment common on the frontier. Lincoln often slept in the back room of the store after long nights of reading. According to local legend, he once discovered he'd overcharged a customer by 6 cents and walked 3 miles to return the money, contributing to his nickname, Honest Abe. Berry's problem. The partnership had a fatal flaw. William Berry was an alcoholic. Berry apparently took advantage of the new liquor license to drink while working in the store. Lincoln spent more time dealing with customers and reading during downtime. Berry spent his time sampling the inventory. The business fell into debt quickly. By 1833, New Salem was no longer growing. The Sangamon River proved inadequate for commercial transportation. No roads or railroads provided access to larger markets. The town was dying, and so was Berry and Lincoln. In April 1833, just 1 month after obtaining the liquor license, Lincoln sold his interest in the store to Berry. On May 7, 1833, Lincoln was appointed postmaster of New Salem, giving him steady income and an excuse to leave the failing business. Berry kept the store open another year before closing in 1834. Then in January 1835, Berry died, reportedly from complications of alcoholism, though some sources cite malaria fever. And Lincoln inherited Berry's debts. The national debt. The total debt from Berry and Lincoln was $1,100, equivalent to about $40,000 today. Lincoln called it his national debt, a massive sum for a young man with no steady income. He couldn't pay it off as a surveyor and postmaster. He couldn't pay it off studying law. Even when elected to the Illinois state legislature in 1834, the salary wasn't enough. Lincoln finally paid off the entire debt in 1848, 15 years after the business failed, when he became a member of the United States House of Representatives. He was 39 years old. The debt from his brief bartending career had followed him from frontier storekeeper to congressman. It's worth noting, William Franklin Berry, the Reverend's oldest son and William Berry's brother, was a successful businessman who actually paid some of Lincoln's debts after his brother's death. The debt wasn't entirely on Lincoln's shoulders, but Lincoln felt responsible for all of it and worked to pay every cent. The political problem. Lincoln never mentioned his liquor license during his political career. When Douglas accused him of being a grocery keeper at the debates, Lincoln denied it, technically truthfully, since he'd only held the license for 1 month before selling his share to Berry. But the accusations stuck. Everyone in Illinois knew frontier groceries meant taverns, and Lincoln had co-owned one, however briefly. Why did Lincoln try to hide it? Because 1850s politics was deeply intertwined with the temperance movement. Many voters, especially evangelical Protestants, opposed alcohol. Admitting you'd been a licensed bartender could cost elections. Yet ironically, Lincoln wasn't a teetotaler. He didn't drink much himself, but he had no moral objection to alcohol. He just knew that admitting to bartending was political poison. At the Ottawa debate, after denying the grocery keeper charge, Lincoln pivoted immediately to more important topics. He couldn't afford to let the conversation linger on his youthful business ventures. The legacy of Berry and Lincoln. Today you can visit reconstructed Berry and Lincoln store at Lincoln's New Salem State Historic Site. The site features 23 reconstructed 1830s buildings. Berry and Lincoln is the only frame building among the log structures. The store appears in popular culture, too. The 1930 film Abraham Lincoln features Lincoln's time as a storekeeper. The site attracts visitors fascinated by Lincoln's pre-presidential life. And Lincoln's liquor license, signed by both Berry and Lincoln, with their bond co-signed by Bowling Green. is preserved at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. You can see the actual document that made Lincoln a licensed bartender. The story reveals something important about Lincoln. He wasn't born great. He struggled with debt, made bad business decisions, picked the wrong partner, worked menial jobs to survive. Berry and Lincoln failed spectacularly. Berry drank the inventory. The town died. The debt lasted 15 years. By any measure, it was a disaster. Yet that disaster shaped Lincoln. It taught him financial responsibility, gave him empathy for debtors and struggling businesses, made him understand the working class in ways wealthy politicians never could. The bartending president, the failed grocery keeper who became the great emancipator. It's a very American story. The final pour. So here's what happened. In January 1833, Abraham Lincoln co-purchased a general store in New Salem, Illinois, with William Berry. In March, they obtained a $7 tavern license, making them legal bartenders. Berry was an alcoholic who drank the inventory. Lincoln sold his share after 1 month. Berry died in 1835, leaving Lincoln with $1,100 in debt. Lincoln paid it off in 1848 as a congressman. During the 1858 debates, Stephen Douglas mocked Lincoln as a grocery keeper, frontier slang for bartender. Lincoln denied it, unwilling to admit his brief stint selling whiskey by the drink. But the records don't lie. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, the great emancipator, Honest Abe, was once a licensed bartender who co-owned a failing tavern with an alcoholic partner. It's not the presidency's most dignified origin story, but it's real, and somehow that makes Lincoln more relatable. The man who preserved the Union once sold rum for 18.75 cents a half pint. The man who freed the slaves once couldn't pay his own debts. He was human, flawed, struggling, just like everyone else, and he became president anyway. That's the real story of Berry and Lincoln.